That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
This is Joe Howie.
And we're coming to you after a disappointing Friars loss. Friars falling 71-56 at Villanova. They led at the half 27-24, but got outscored 47-29 in the second half. There was a lot here. There's a lot of emotion from both of us. Joe, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, there's a lot to take in. I think, especially in the final 10 minutes of the game, we looked like a deflated balloon offensively, turning the ball over, poor shot selection. But it's very hard to play a game with a lot of energy when on back-to-back possessions, offensive, defensive, the ball is being taken from you and given to Villanova. And Matt, you and I, we've agreed we will never ever attribute a loss to poor officiating. I think that the way we played is the way the game ended. But when you're playing on offense and you get called for a charge, the ball's given back to them, and then on defense you can't even play tight D. You can't even breathe near Colin Gillespie without a foul being called. It's almost like, why even bother? You know, it's almost inevitable that when you play at Villanova, calls are going to go their way. But this today in the second half, it was almost a little ridiculous. We saw the referees elude Villanova from overtime against Seton Hall, and we saw them today basically just hand them the second half. Now we did poor things to him. We'll get into that, but I think that needs to be covered first and foremost.
Yeah, and that was just really frustrating. You look at the foul differential, 20 fouls called on the Friars, just 13 on Villanova. I can tell you, we both watched the games. When it came to a physicality level, it looked dead even at both ends of the floor. I mean, you should not have a 7 foul disparity between these two teams. And the part that got really frustrating, I mean, you had that last foul call on Nate Watson. Watson lowers his shoulder into the guy. 9 of the other 10 teams in the Big East, that's not a foul. Why? Because the guy's going to body him up and not let him give into the paint. When it's Robinson Earl, he goes down and just flops, and it's offensive foul. I guess, I mean, Kevin McNamara was saying it. He said Jay Wright coaches these guys to flop like NBA players. And you saw it all game long. How many turnovers did Nate Watson have where he's trying to back a guy into the paint and he's leaning on him, and the guy just kind of flops or kind of pulls the table out from under him and lets Watson travel? So I mean, that's discipline on Watson, but Villanova does not play with the same type of physicality. They play with physicality, but not the same type as other Big East teams, and it's frustrating to play against, to say the least.
You know what I say to that? I get it. It's smart and it works because you draw a lot of fouls. That's soft basketball. Jay
Mhm.
Wright teaches his players to be soft, to flop. I mean, Robinson Earl, I always say he's an undersized center, but he plays Division One for a reason. You can body up Nate Watson without falling every time.
Yeah,
Just it's so disappointing. It's the whole way the game goes is just very disappointing because after a promising first half, the second half, it really got away from us, and then you could tell the guys did not look motivated. They looked defeated, and there were still 10 minutes left.
yeah, that's where, and part of that's like you got to have it mentally. You have to stay in the game, but I think now is a good time to go back to the sun delay. Friars come out of halftime. You're sitting there on the couch. You flip back over to the games. You're gonna come out, and you notice, oh, it's taking a little bit for them to get on the floor. Like, what's going on? Is there a TV delay? Then you discover somebody didn't cover up a window, and their sun is shining on the basketball court. And it takes them 20 minutes to find a ladder, some duct tape, and a tablecloth to put something over it. And suddenly the Friars are cold and out of rhythm to start the half.
So funny side note: a buddy of mine, Paul Michaels, we played 4 years of rugby together at PC. He was texting me during the game, and he called it window gate. We were saying, it wouldn't surprise us that if at halftime someone on the Villanova side said, "Hey, open that window so that we can cause a delay and make them get cold," or even if it wasn't noticed that we could be shooting with the sun on our eyes. But regardless, it worked. The open window made us cold, and that's what happened. Window gate.
Yep. It reminds me, if you go back to that Super Bowl, the Ravens and the 49ers down in New Orleans. You got the Ravens running away with the game, and then all of a sudden the power goes out, and the 49ers come roaring back. Couldn't finish the comeback, but it completely changed the momentum. That's kind of how this felt. Friars controlled most of the first half and held Villanova to just 24 points. Great defensive effort. Probably not as good on offense as the Friars wanted. Plenty of missed opportunities, which we'll get into, but absolute momentum killer coming out of the break. Absolute momentum killer. It played like a fresh game. Villanova got into their rhythm very quickly, and once they do that, there's very few teams in all of college basketball that are going to play with them.
I agree. So let's shift this here to us now. We talked a lot about the things out of our control. No matter what, you can't control the officials unless you're Jay Wright, in which you seem to be able to control them perfectly. You can't control what happens in the arena. What you can control is your response to the officiating. What you can control is your pace of play, your tempo, and your mental outlook on the game. And we got defeated by that. Let we let things out of our control us. I mean, just because there's poor officiating doesn't mean that you have to get down in the dumps and you don't put effort forward in the final 10 minutes. And that's what happened. The guys looked defeated before the game was even over. And offensively, this was a burning dumpster fire. I mean, we were poor shot selection, and nothing was going in.
No.
Defensively, you try and play them as tough as you can, but it's very, very difficult. It's very
Yeah, I don't.
difficult to play body up defense on this team.
Yeah, and I have no real complaints with the defense. I think had the offense played a little bit better, Villanova scores less than 71 points. Um, there was just too many turnovers to let Villanova get easy buckets and again get them to doing what they do. And holding Villanova to 71, that in and of itself is impressive. I think Villanova got some luck with the offensive rebounding and stuff, so no complaints with the defense. The offense. I mean, it starts at the top. David Duke, he is your leader. 4 of 17 from the floor, 1 of 6 from beyond the arc. He was cold from 3-point range. I'm pretty sure all 6 of those were open looks with his feet set and everything. Takes 17 shots, only gets to the free throw line once. He did have 11 rebounds, so that part is awesome. No complaints about that part of his game. But as a shooter and a facilitator, woof. Bad game.
Yeah, if I had to, I think with the exception of this game and the Creighton game, I think the toll of running the backcourt alone has kind of built up on Duke, and we're kind of seeing it with his performance at Creighton, his performance now at Villanova. Thank God for Alan Breed, because I think, the weight of playing the point and the two is being lifted. But man, you can tell Duke looks tired. I mean, without Bynum for that 3-game skid stretch, it was all Duke. And
Mm-hmm.
now we're seeing the effects. And listen, we beat Creighton. That was a tough game, and Duke was off. And now you lose to Villanova. It was a tough game for us, but Duke was off. And I think the 3-game skid is starting to wear him down a little bit. So thank God Alan Breed is coming on, because he was the one, and I mean like the single one good thing that I will take away from this game, because he came up with his first career double-double, 11 rebounds for the little guy. That's great. And
Yeah,
he matched and beat his career high from last game with 18 points. So really, really, really proud of what he can do. And as the season goes on, he's going to be a very important piece for us going forward, especially with no Bynum.
yeah. And if you look at that differential between Duke and Breed and their stat lines, if you look at like just 2-pointers, for example, Duke was 3 for 11. Again, only 1 free throw drawn and 4 assists, but 6 turnovers. Breed, on the other hand, was 3 for 6 from inside the arc and got to the free throw line 7 times, also 11 rebounds, also 4 assists, only 1 turnover. And Breed played really good defense too. I was impressed by him at both ends of the floor. He found his confidence. He's coming on right now. And also, if we're talking about bright spots, he got into foul trouble, but I think we gotta give a shout out to Nichols. He continued to play well
Yeah.
today.
Uh, um, Listen, Nichols, I mean, in this game especially, you can't really help foul trouble, especially when we like to play a switch defense where Nichols will get a mismatch with a smaller guy like Gillespie. So I get it. I understand why he's in foul trouble. He's a big, long guy. But there were some phantom fouls. We won't get into it again. if he wasn't in foul trouble, he probably would have scored in double figures. He is coming on. He's that missing piece at the 4 that we really needed. And, it's about time. You're getting into the thick of conference play. Step up. It's a good time
Hmm.
for him to be heating up now.
Absolutely, because when you look at the other guys that are going to play that position, Gant and Horkler, Gant, I mean, solid on defense. I'll say that. He had a couple errors, but he's a young guy. I don't think. I think on defense, Gant and Nichols are giving you somewhat close to the same thing, but on offense, only took 3 shots, only makes one of them, turns the ball over 3 times.
Yeah, we've had our ups and our downs about Greg Gant. When he is on the floor and those entry passes, it can't be him. That's just all. It cannot be him.
Hmm.
He he does not look composed offensively. When the ball's in his hands, he's very sporadic. Like you said, Matt, he probably sees the game at 1,000 miles per hour. Defensively, he's long and he can use his length to upset other players, smaller players. At Creighton, we saw him pull down 7 rebounds. Tonight, it was just not his night at all. He did not put together a good game, and I think there was one possession where, or not possession, but sequence rather, where Gant gets subbed in. I forget what he did. He did an awful, awful, awful play. It was either a foul or turnover. The next possession, he was off the floor, and Nichols was back in with 4 fouls. So I think that speaks volumes to what Ed Cooley and the staff is thinking about him. But I mean, for a guy that has a lot of promise, it's just a bad game. There's some trends here that we've been seeing throughout the entirety of the season, but he's got to clean it up because right now Nichols is really pushing for a spot, and if he continues to play the way he is, we're going to see Horkler come off the bench and Gant's minutes are going to diminish.
And Horkler's minutes aren't super strong either. He only played 7 minutes, so he has clearly fallen out of favor in favor of Gant and Nichols. You talk about cleaning it up. I mean, the one thing I look at here, you look at the stats: 6 of 16 for layups for the Friars. 6 for 16. The number of close shots that they missed kind of brings you back to that first Creighton game where it looked like they were intimidated by Creighton's physicality, didn't know what to do, and got scared off a bit, and couldn't finish shots around the rim. It's the same type of thing, and that's Duke and Watson right there. That's both of them. Both of those guys struggled.
Yeah, I mean, I said it in the pregame show. Jay Wright, he plans for your banner guys, your billboard guys. He planned for Duke and Watson, and I mean, Watson had probably, I'd say this was his worst performance of the season. I mean, statistically, it might say otherwise. I don't think he played very well tonight. I think we struggled to get the ball to him. I think that's probably why. But even when he had the ball in his hands, it was foul and turnover. And I get it, that's out of his control, but it resulted in a poor performance for him. And this is probably going to have to flip the next time we play this team because we have the size advantage on them. And I still will say Robinson Earl is not a center, and Nate Watson is better in the paint than him. I'll still hold true to that even after a loss like this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. The Villanova, I mean, they did what we thought they were going to do. You double Nate Watson and you deny his entry passes as much as you can, and make life difficult and make PC beat you with other guys. And usually that means it's Breed and Nichols. Unfortunately, that didn't really matter because Duke and Watson didn't show up like they were supposed to. And Reeves didn't really do he only took 4 shots and only made one of them. It was really a subpar performance there from Reeves again. So
You you ever see that? I guess it's like a little. Do you say GIF or GIF?
GIF.
You ever see that GIF on Twitter where it's the little mouse from Cat Dog and he walks in, he waves, and then he turns and walks out and shuts the door behind him?
Hmm.
That's been AJ Reeves offensively over the span of the past 3 weeks. I'll say because defensively, AJ Reeves is actually he's playing really well on defense and his rebounding numbers have gone up. But offensively, it's almost like he came in conference play, he popped in, he said hello, and then he walked back out. So I mean, we need to clean that up too because we need more people scoring.
Reeves needs to find his stroke. We'll say the other thing that was notable, the assist numbers. The first 3 baskets of the game, Friars had an assist on it. You're passing in to get the score, however it is. They did not have a basket with an assist for the rest of the first half after that. They made 11 shots in the first half, and only 3 had assists. And that they figured that out a little bit more in the second half, but you only made 20 baskets on the game, only shot 5 of 16 from beyond the arc. This is something Ed Cooley was just talking about in the post-game presser. The team did not look connected on offense. I think when you look back at this in hindsight, what you're going to look back on is that first half. The Friars had Villanova where they wanted them on defense, and the offense could not build a lead. The Friars easily could have had a 37-24 instead of 27-24 lead if the offense put things together the way it needed to, but it couldn't. And you can credit Jay Wright in that defense, absolutely, but the Friars did not play the way they needed to there. And again, I look to David Duke there. 4 assists is great. 4 assists with 6 turnovers is not. That was your problem. You're too many empty
Yeah,
possessions.
I think it's become obvious over the course of this week that David Duke is off his game a little bit. It's probably fatigue. It's probably the fact that we've played 4 straight road games and that for 2 of them, David Duke basically ran the backcourt by himself. So, this next home game is sorely, sorely needed. You need to get back on campus. You need to get comfortable in your own bed, in your own practice gym, your own workout room, whatever. And Duke just needs a rest, I think. I think that's what it comes down to is fatigue. We've been on the road, and this is a game that is mentally tolling on you, especially
Yeah,
in the second half. So when you need a guy like Duke who has been known to step up for us in late game situations.
yeah. No, he needs to find. And it looked like he and Watson were pressing at times, kind of like what you saw early in the non-conference, where you try to run your offense through 2 guys, and when things stop working, then the offense entirely shuts down. That's kind of how this felt again. I mean, you saw it in the second half. The Friars had that you call a timeout. You have that 5-0 run. Villanova calls a timeout. Villanova immediately goes on an 11-0 run. And for that entire stretch, the Friars offense looked disconnected. They had just figured it out. Both of those 2 baskets they got out of the timeout were from assists. Guys either driving and kicking out or driving and taking it to the basket or passing it to somebody. That was working. Then they come back out of another Villanova timeout and they completely forgot about that. They're all playing isolation ball, and I'm not entirely sure what that was, but you can't do that. You can't go on the road to the number 3 team in the country and have how many turnovers was it? 19 turnovers?
Yeah, 19.
Unacceptable. You got to clean it up.
Yeah, I mean, we were sloppy with the basketball. We didn't look motivated. Our our star player, I mean, he's playing off a little bit. Nate Watson was, the victim of foul trouble and poor officiating. There was a combination of a bunch of different things, but ultimately, Friar fans are going to want to forget this game. You said something, Matt. I'm not going to credit Jay Wright's defense entirely for being stout and whatnot because I don't think Villanova defensively is great. I think we were just off tonight. Like, I
I
don't think
think
they had these monster blocks or stops that were killers to us. I think we shot ourselves in the foot offensively is more of the storyline of this game.
Well, I think it's a mix of both. I'm crediting Jay Wright in that they did a really good job of denying entry passes to Nate Watson, and that's really the starting block for the offense. If they can't get the ball inside, then nothing works. And the Villanova did a good job of denying that first pass and not letting things get going, which it's not some super creative game plan. It's been the game plan against the Friars when they've had Nate Watson in the game for probably 3 seasons now. That's what you have to do, and teams know how to do it. It's just hard to execute. Villanova executed. Credit to Jay Wright on that. Credit to the players, and a lack of credit to the Friars for not adjusting the way you need to that.
We're giving out credit. We sound like Ed Cooley in a post-game press conference. It always starts with, you know what, I want a credit, and then enter team that beat us here.
Yeah, like I understand that because he can't go in there and trash his own players if they play poorly, but I'd say
No.
it's not often that the Friars have 2 guys have double doubles and um, then you lose. And it's not often that one of the guys who has a double double, you're still saying he had a bad game. I mean, we said this after Creighton too. Duke puts up the numbers because of the volume, but sometimes he's incredibly inefficient. So even with the
Yeah.
numbers,
You're right, Matt, and I think it is so telling of the talent level of David Duke and Nate Watson because Watson, who shot, I think it was 50% from the floor, who only had 12 points. Duke put up a double double, but had an abysmal shooting percentage. These guys had an off night and were still in double figures. Duke still with a double double. That just tells you how good these two are when they're on, and I think we saw that the prime example of that with Watson when we just played Creighton. But again, on an off night, these two guys are still putting up double figures. You had Allen Breed who stepped up and put up a double double. You just need those other pieces to fall into place offensively, and I think you're set. Defensively, it's tough. You can play as physical as you want, but sometimes physical defense does not bode well for the Friars, and we saw that tonight.
yeah. And again, it's that. I mean, it backfires when you get the foul calls, and Villanova's a team. Once they take a lead, then they can control the tempo and they can do what they want to do, and they're always going to hit the shot they need to hit. That's who they are. So you can't let them play with a lead. And the second they got that lead in the second half, there's still like 15 minutes left. I think every Friar fan, you look and you say, all right, yeah, this is over. You just know how it goes when you play them. You got to execute better. But yeah,
Yeah,
do we want to do player of the game? I think we're on the same page for this one.
Allen Breed.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give Allen Breed Player of the Week right now. Forget Player of the Game. I mean, stepped up big time at Creighton, and had we made this a closer game, I would say this is a big clutch performance from him. You just lose the clutch factor because it didn't really result in anything other than a great game for him to build and grow. So
Mm.
closer game, huge clutch performance. We lost, but still not to taint anything because he had a great performance. A double double. I mean, what is this? His fourth straight game starting.
Mm-hmm.
To have a double double, your fourth game starting as a freshman in the Big East,
It's
forget it.
impressive.
We
On the road
we
at
keep this
Villanova.
kid for forget it. We keep this kid for 2, 3 more years. He's going to be an all league player. Mark my
And
words.
I think that the bigger storyline going forward, this is back to, I mean, 15 points last game for Breed and 18 points this game. I think he's going to be Big East Freshman of the Week with that. And two, Ed Cooley just said there's still no timetable for Jared Bynum to return. I'm not sure if Jared Bynum's getting his job back when he returns. And then also, if David Duke plays like this, David Duke might be hitting the bench in favor of Bynum and Breed
Uh,
for
I
for
think.
stretches. Now, I'm not saying for a game or from the starting lineup, but
Uh,
for stretches of the game.
oh, okay. I was gonna say I think in terms of starting lineups, I think the former is much more likely. I think Breed has really embraced the role as a starter. He's produced more statistically than Bynum. I mean, listen, Bynum's a great point guard. He's a table setter, but Breed is giving you an offensive punch in the scoring column that you haven't seen, and defensively pulling down rebounds in our favor is huge. Bynum is a great guard, and I think we've missed him because I think if we have him, Breed, and Duke on the floor, it's going to be something scary. But Breed brings more to the table as a starter than Bynum does. So I think even when Bynum does come back, we're going to see him come off the bench for a handful of games until he, earns his spot back at the one. Until then, Breed is our point guard.
Yep. And the other thing is, Breed can play the point in the kind of traditional Ed Cooley sense as a guy who can drive and score, and Bynum's a little bit more in the Mekhi Ashton Langford sense as a table setter.
Yeah.
And that having both of those guys allows you to do a lot. And remember, one's a freshman and one's a sophomore. Both of these guys are going to be in PC for a while. So you look to the future with Bynum as the one, Breed as the two. That looks good, but that's looking too far down the line. Um,
I will
yeah,
say, I think looking down the line, there was a lineup that Ed had in. And Matt, we talked about this in the pregame. Ed experimented in the second half with a couple of different lineups too, I noticed. Especially once Villanova started running away with it. I saw there were a couple of different lineups. There was one that I liked. It was Ed Croswell, Jimmy Nichols, Greg Gant, Reeves, and Breed on the floor. And I was thinking, what are the two big holes here? Watson and Duke. I wonder if Ed was experimenting with the potential of not having Duke and Watson next season, because that could very well be a lineup you see on the floor.
There's that, and there's also Duke and Watson both got into foul trouble real quick and had to come out.
Well, fair,
Which I
yes.
which I think, I mean, that's one of the flaws of having a team that's as top heavy as the Friars are. You go back to that one year when the Friars had Dunn and Bentel, and both of them were just absolutely destroying teams. They lost to an 11 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament because they both got into foul trouble early, had to sit, and Dayton got hot, and the Friars got cold. That's kind of what happened tonight. I mean, obviously, you're playing against a better team. I don't think that this doesn't impact your resume one way or the other. I think now you have to go beat Villanova at home, but
Yeah,
that's the position you're in now. Got to beat Nova last game of the season. That might almost decide if you're making the tournament or not.
I wouldn't say that. I don't know if that's going to be the deciding factor. I think there are a couple of other games as I'm looking at the schedule right now. I think with Marquette and Seton Hall, those are two banner games, I will say. They're both at home. I think you need to win both of those because when you do that, you complete the sweep of Seton Hall. You split with Marquette, and then I think Connecticut and Xavier. You gotta at least split with Connecticut. You'd like to sweep them, but that's going to be a very tough matchup. And then Xavier, you got to split with them. Everyone else, Georgetown, St. John's, DePaul, you already beat DePaul. Ideally, you'd like to sweep them. St. John's and Georgetown, you're statistically better than them. So you'd like to sweep or split with them. So I don't know if that home Villanova game will be the determinant of our NCAA tournament fate. I think it would certainly help to knock them off in your own gym, especially on the last game of the season. That's something that you want to go out with a bang.
I think that's one of those games where if you're that fixes whether or not you're nervous going into Selection Sunday if the Friars do what they're supposed to. And if we take a quick look ahead, the next two games versus Marquette and at Georgetown, Friars really can't afford to lose either of those. I think
Nope.
basically every home game except for one of UConn and Villanova, you can lose one of those two. Every other home game is a must-win from here on out.
I agree. You cannot lose at home to any other teams in the Big East. You let Creighton take that one, that's fine, and that's it. But now, looking tunnel vision directly ahead, Marquette. This is a Marquette team that out-toughed us on the road in the middle of what was a very daunting four-game road stretch. That we were lucky to get a win on this four-game road stretch, and we were lucky it was over a ranked team. So now you got to come home. You're comfortable. You're back at Alumni Hall. You're back on campus. I think the students are back on campus now too.
They
But you got to
are.
be careful. You got to be careful with COVID. Keep
Mm-hmm.
the players isolated, and you got to beat Marquette. You can't let Steve Wojciechowski and his squad take one from you on your own campus.
Nope, no, you cannot. I think this is probably a good spot to wrap this up. We're on about 30 minutes of us talking about this point, and I think this is one we want to forget going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Friars, it's 71-56 loss. Throw that in the trash. We'll look to the next game. Wednesday, 7 o'clock on CBS Sports. That'll be Marquette at Providence. Friars looking for a little bit of revenge after falling at Marquette a couple games ago. We will have a pregame show coming for that one, so make sure you stay tuned. But as always, thank you for listening, and make sure you follow us on Twitter and wherever you're listening to this.
Go Friars.